Unlocking social media for your brewery. Who's ready to talk social today? All right, so we had a lot of presentations yesterday and over the past couple of days on the brewing side of your business, the equipment, the taxes, working with LCBO and the beer store and such. Very, very important parts of your business. Marketing is equally as important. What we talked about in our presentation earlier was just the importance of brand story. Equally important is how you folks are showing up on social media, because that's how your consumers are engaging with brands, and that's going to help you differentiate yourself. Again, you've got 300 to 400 breweries in Ontario. How do you stand out from the others? You're not going to be the only one they drink, but why are you the one they drink tonight? So we're lucky, I'm lucky, first of all, to have met these two ladies as a part of this process. I've got Marissa Volstick, she works with Left Field, and then Amy Bro from Bench. And Paul put us together because I was just going to be the moderator for the great stories that they have to tell about how social media is helping to drive their breweries to engage with their customers. What you're going to see in their conversations is it's very different. We're talking about different audiences, different breweries, different ways of approaching things, but with similar kind of strategies in mind, really valuing social media and what it can do to build a business. So I'm just going to be that guy who kind of pulls the strings to get us started, but the conversation's going to go very organically after that. What I'd ask, though, is a lot of you are going to have questions, and we want to save room at the end for those questions. But in order to get through some of the key points, let's hold off to the end. So, maybe make a note, just give us some time to get through the main parts of the conversation, and then we'll give you 20 to 30 minutes there at the end to really get into some of the detail. Does that work? Everybody good? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. What's really important is to come in with an open mind, because you might have a perception of what social media is coming into the presentation today. Maybe you're 100% on. Maybe coming out of the presentation, you're going to think about social a little differently. And that's what we want to encourage. We want to tell you what's working for our breweries here in order for you to take tools back for yourself. And we can talk about best practices. We can talk about watch-outs. We can talk about the stuff that no one wants to talk about, like what if there's a crisis? What if there's a recall? We're going to cover all these things from a social media perspective from two breweries that are doing it really well. So Marissa Volstick, marketing manager, Left Field, great background, right? Graphic arts in the background, design agencies. We have a lot of the kind of branding that you're going to see in the conversation here today for Left Field. She's got a lot of that background. Brand management and voice, making sure that Left Field comes across on social as well as all the other channels in a very consistent way, which is very important. Actively managing social for their brewery really started with the home delivery customer service, which was interesting. It really arose out of need first, but then it's clearly evolved well beyond that now. And then Amy Bro from Bench had the opportunity to learn more about Bench in this process, and it's really, really interesting. She came from a corporate and a digital background, and she's really applying those same principles to Bench, focusing on marketing and brand management. And then really social is going to depend on understanding so many aspects of the brewery, because you could get a field, or you could field a question or a post from any aspect, whether it's when is my beer going to be ready, or I've got an off flavor, or when are you going to be at this event. So whoever is managing social, you're going to hear kind of best practices on what you have to understand about the brewery. And then myself, if I haven't met you yet, I'm with Ontario Craft, and we help breweries, wineries, and distilleries tell their story and help them with planning and sales and marketing strategies in order to stand out. And we really feel that there's a brand vibe, an energy that you tap into is social. But if you don't do it right, you're going to fall on your face, and the consumers are going to disconnect from you. So if you're true to yourself and you're true to your brand story, that's going to be reflected in your social media as well. So let's get started. All right. We have some seats. If you want to grab a seat, don't feel like you have to stand up. All right, so why don't we start off by just talking a little bit about the size of each of the breweries, because the breweries out here are going to want to see themselves lining up with either Left Field or with Bench. So maybe Marissa, you can start.
Yeah, absolutely. So Left Field is based in Toronto's East End. We're an old brick warehouse. I do not know the square footage now that I think of it, but we brew about 6,000 hectoliters a year. We have a team of 24 people, a little bit more in the summer, a little bit less in the winter. But if any of you have been to the brewery, it's not a huge space. We are at capacity. It's our only space. We brew all the beer there. We sell the beer in the tap room. And then we also sell out to licensees in the city, as well as LCBOs and some grocery. And then basically we focus mostly on Instagram and our email newsletter. And we also work on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar already with Left Field, what an incredible brand story. And you may have seen the presentation yesterday by Kolbe, which is a partner of theirs that's just done some amazing things. So why don't you go ahead, Amy, and talk a little bit about your brewery and how you started up with the social, but then let's focus too on the customers, the difference between the two breweries and the different geographies that you're really servicing.
Sure. So Bench is a brewery in Niagara, just down the road. You should visit us on your way out. And we are bigger than Left Field in that we brew more beer, and we also are a larger brewery. So we have two sides of the brewery. We have a clean side and a funk side, so it's kind of two breweries in one. And we also have a restaurant and an event space, and we're on a farm, and so it's a totally different physical landscape than Left Field in the city. So our consumer really is more, we're trying to get people to come visit us, and we rely heavily on like sales channels like LCBO and key customers in the on-premise to get our liquid out there. In terms of social, we use Instagram primarily, Facebook as well. We do have Twitter, which we engage some people on, but it's not a major channel for us. We do heavily rely on newsletters to communicate, what's actively going on. Other channels like TikTok and LinkedIn are channels that we have but aren't actively participating in.
So I think the difference there is that in Toronto, we're competing with the craft brewery on the opposite corner and the other corner across from that as to like why we want people to come to Left Field versus trying to get them to come out. They're already in the city. They're already likely doing a beer crawl. So why are we the one that they're going to come back to next time they're in the city?
Yeah, and we're more focused on competing kind of at the shelf at LCBO because not that many people go out to Niagara. I mean, a lot of people do go out to Niagara, but not that many people have stumbled upon, we don't have the source of people that Toronto does. So, we're a surprise and delight and a destination, but we are not, we don't have the foot traffic.
Yeah, I like the way that Amy put that. A lot of you folks probably could see yourself in one of those two camps geographically, right? You're either closer to a metro where foot traffic is an option, or potentially you're that destination that's a little bit more difficult to sell. You need to go the extra mile in terms of drawing people out to 20, 30 miles outside of town, which might be off of the beaten path for them. Let's talk a little bit, if we could, because to further understand where these folks might see themselves in your scenarios, what's your team look like? How many people are working on social? Is it a group? Is it one person? Help me out.
So I like to say that I'm a one-woman marketing team in that I write out the copy, I'm pushing post, I'm taking the photos, I'm signing the labels. We do have a person who answers social media questions as a customer service rep. So not so much like looking at Instagram and actually replying to comments. I still do that. But generally, it's a one-on-one marketing team.
Yeah, and despite, you know, us being a little bit bigger, we're still like pretty lean. I have to, like, we have a graphic designer on my team, so it's myself and the graphic designer that kind of tackle, you know, the plan, as the planning schedule, but in terms of the day-to-day management of replying to people, it's me. So, you know, if you message us at 7 p.m., I'm sitting on my couch replying to you guys.
Yeah, all the more reason why whoever is charged with social media at your brewery has to know so much about the ins and outs of the business, right? Because they are basically the one responding on the couch at 7 p.m. These responses typically can't wait until the next morning, because what if somebody in Messenger actually asks, hey, I'm trying to get to your event tonight and I can't find you, can you help? We're not always on 24/7 for sure, we have to have a life, but at the same time, the social media manager is going to be that person who is fielding all those off-hours questions and such. Okay, and so are you starting to see yourselves kind of lining up? Maybe people have the luxury of one or two people who are working on social media for them, or maybe it's the taproom manager or somebody doing it part-time, or even a consultant on the outside. You have to have the experience with the brewery, you have to have access to the tools, you have to have access to the people in order to build up that repertoire of knowledge that you can actually deliver on behalf of the brand socially. Okay, so we started to talk about the channels. We've got Instagram, a little bit of Twitter, Facebook. Any others that we're using, or do you really kind of focus in on those areas, spend most of your time there? Yeah. And so I would just say LinkedIn, from a business perspective, may make sense to some of the breweries, because potentially you're looking to expand your story to the industry, people who are looking to, you know, learn from you, maybe use you as a mentor, or reach out to somebody to be a mentee. The LinkedIn platform, from a professional perspective, might be something that you consider. It's not something you're actively posting against, I would suggest. And then Untapped is to these breweries, you know, it's maybe a necessary evil, maybe it's something that you invest in, but it's the idea of people and that voice where you're actually at the brewery and you're able to actively review a beer. Now, I would suggest for Untapped, let's always get ahead of that. Let's always get ahead of the beer release. We are the ones who should post the beer has been released. I don't necessarily want for one of my customers to come in and give a great review for a beer they misspelled, right? And then it lives forever, right? It's hard to get rid of that. So
well, there's 4 of the same beer.
Exactly right.
Yeah, you want to get up there ahead of that one for sure.
Yeah, so if we use Untapped, let's try and build that into our release schedule, not only social or our press release, but the Untapped being updated. Okay, so we're good on platforms that we're using. How about tools that we're using? Maybe we could talk a little bit about the management tools or the listening tools.
So Left Field we use later, mainly because it features the link in bio function. So that was not something I implemented when I started a couple of years ago, which just helps drive traffic to the site. It's a lot easier than trying to have somebody then type something into a browser, especially on a phone. It's nice to be able to go and have your links there. It's tied to a photo. And then we also get some data from using later, so we can see engagement rates and likes and things like that, but beyond the 3 months that Instagram gives you. Talking about necessary evils, we can talk about Instagram and their insight platform, because it's a nightmare. You have to leave it on your phone. There's no good way to consolidate the data, so something third party, no matter what you use, however it's tailored to you, just gives you some insights beyond that like 3-month window. And then if you forget to check your Instagram insights, they're still there.
Yeah, for us, in terms of like on Instagram platform itself, we use Linktree, which provides some insights there. And then as a planning tool, we use an app or a platform called Planoli. I don't know if I say it like cannoli, but maybe it's like Planoli. I don't know. But that helps, it encompasses multiple platforms, so you can schedule things all at once and reply to things directly from there. So.
I personally use cannoli for my.
Ultimately, there's tons and tons of third-party platforms that are going to let you schedule and get these insights. It's about finding the one that fits your needs. Do you need just Instagram? Do you need multi-platform? What kind of insights do you need? There's a million. You just have to find the one that fits right for you.
Well, and in talking to these two over the last couple of days, I've learned a lot just about, practically speaking, what are the brewery owners and managers looking for out of social media reporting, right? It's what level of insights are going to move the business. If you have monthly meetings with the management and all the team, how does social come up in those meetings? And what I learned is there's practical reporting and there's sales reporting. What I want to know as a manager, as an owner, is how is social moving sales? We get it. I feel like Amy and Marissa have told me the insights that we get from these tools are more for me personally to help tune my efforts, to make me better, to help me test and learn in these platforms, so that I can go back on a monthly basis and I can say, yeah, we actually did see a rise in sales. Here are the 5 things that went on that month with respect to marketing and social. Let's figure out the levers that work to help increase the sales or the traffic for that month. So it's a much more pointed performance conversation than a broad likes and responses and engagement and kind of a headier social conversation, right? A tool that I use, in addition to the ones that were mentioned, is called Sprout Social, and you may have heard of it. And all of these tools together, what they're doing is they're offering efficiencies, because as a part-time person, as a full-time person, as a person with many hats, you need to make things as efficient as possible in all of your business, not just social. And these tools allow you to post to all the networks, to receive insights and tracking and measurement from all the networks. Sprout Social is one of those tools. Something that benefits clients that I've worked with is how we can actually compare ourselves to our peers. So you identify the 20 breweries in the 20-kilometer radius of where you are, and those are the ones that you're actively tracking. Not from a perspective, but more so like, well, what are they doing? How are they getting out there? And the social tool, Sprout Social, lets you track what they're doing on social, and you can kind of compare your efforts, benchmark your efforts that way. So whatever tool you choose, like the ones that have been suggested, just find a tool. Find a tool that'll help you kind of dig deeper into social strategy. So we're going to get into a little bit of content. And we've got some good examples that I'm going to flash up on the screen from Left Field and Bench. But I want to talk more about the spirit of content, what we're thinking. Maybe you could tell me, Marissa, start on content for the month. How you go about it, what's really important to Left Field, how you propose the calendar that's really going to end up being the daily or weekly posts.
So the biggest thing with Left Field is kind of a 3-pillar system where we're about beer, baseball, and community. So basically our posts are scheduled in that order. We tend to have a release either every week, every other week. So that will be the base of the week. And then we add in some baseball, we add in some community posts, we add in some fun things. And basically in that order, that's what builds out the schedule. Often we have an event we need to talk about, or something's going on in the baseball world, or we have a Beer for Everybody initiative that changes kind of every other month. So we're talking about that throughout the month. So basically goes beer, baseball, community.
In that order, okay.
Pretty much in that order.
Cool. I mean, for us, I look at my social planning kind of first on a yearly basis. So we'll divide up all the months based on like what are the major themes that are happening this year. You know, what are some of the big things that we want to make sure that we hit on? Are there any like huge events that we're really in support of? Bench is the craft beer partner with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So you know, when does the CFL season start? What are some key games? Map those out. You know, we're in farm country, wine country. So what are, you know, when is harvest season? When does patio open? Like, so I map out kind of all the key dates of important things for us, and then I'll go, you know, month by month of you know, specifically what do we have going on and how can I support that. But so I make sure that I hit all the communication initiatives that we're doing. And then everything else really is about showcasing our brewery and our sense of place. You know, because our focus is so much on experience and bringing you to us, for the people that can't get to us or need to be convinced to come to us, how can we showcase that experience through our social?
Two really important points to draw from those examples. One is the prioritization of content. And so what we see with Left Field is really starting and focusing on the product release schedule. And that's what their customers are asking for, and that's what they're known for. And then it goes to baseball and others down the road, right? But beer first. Now, what we're hearing from Amy at Bench, not in stark contrast, but a difference, is visualizing the experience for the potential guest, or reinforcing for the current fan or follower on social what it's like to have a Bench experience, the beer and wine country. And so you can see the difference there. Neither one is right or wrong, it's all based on what your customer is asking for. But once you recognize that, that again becomes a filter for your social media. The second piece of it that's really worth pulling out is the calendaring. You might not ever think about the need to put together a social content calendar. Well, I just ask my person to post. That's fine, and it's real time, and maybe there's stuff happening in the tap room, and you want to capture that. You know, that's great, because social is real time. But to the extent that you can actually look at a calendar, good for Amy for doing it on a year basis, right? Most of us have trouble thinking for a week. Yeah.
I think that's what's important, is that when we say a year or even 6 months, whatever it is, this is like, for us, it's like, okay, Blackburn Fridays in November, and this is in December.
Yeah.
And so, and then once you slot in those beer releases, that's when you have room and energy and time and capacity to do the fun things, because those things are handled and thought of. And you're not running around, I mean, we're still always running around on release day, but you're not running around on release day with writing copy and taking photos and getting it out there. Like, those things are ready to go and scheduled. So you're getting the beer that's coming off the line, and then it's going up on social, so people are getting the freshest beer, they're getting that new beer. Especially in Toronto, that's the great example between the two of us, is that we're releasing a new beer every week, every other week, because we're trying to get that repetitive customer coming back off the street and have a reason to know our name. So that's a structure, but the beer has a mind of its own. I'm sure I don't need to tell many of you, and I maybe have a schedule for a month, but that's, the beer brew schedule might change 3 times in 1 week, and then where's my schedule at the end of that? So it's also about flexibility, but having that kind of roadmap gives you the time and energy to be a little more nimble on your feet.
Yeah, so something that we have to remember too is it's all cumulative. And what I mean by that is, if you've got a calendar, even if it's a month out, and it looks like, here's when social's gonna hit for that new beer, here's the press release that we just put together, and we're gonna send that out to our media-friendly journalists in the area, announcing it. Here's the change that's gonna happen in the tasting room. Here's the event that we're planning. All of these things build momentum for your brewery, but only if they're talking to each other. Only if they're coordinated in a calendar. It doesn't take a lot of extra time, it just takes a half step of pre-thought, right? it takes once a month getting together with your team. Okay, what are we doing this month? And the person charged with social is going to have that on their calendar. The person charged with events and such, or sales, or if that's the same person, whoever it is, they're at least thinking about it in advance, and everything hits at the same time. That's when you get out from underneath this crowd of breweries, because everything's hitting at the same time in a way that it's not for other people. So calendars are a great way to manage that.
I will also say we're gonna probably talk about consistency a lot. That's gonna be a theme. And knowing when things are coming allows you to be more consistent in your photography and your copywriting, because again, you have the time to think about these things. So even if I know I need a photograph for a certain beer or something, and today is a terrible rainy day, I know that it's coming up and I can push it a day, or I can get it on the nice day the week before. So it also allows you to be strategic and consistent in your photography, copy, everything else.
And having those calendars, I think, also helps the internal team understand everything that goes into releasing a product or launching an event or whatever it may be. So say, there's been a supply issue and something's pushed back, and okay, well, we need to fill the gap, and we'll now push this beer release to next week. And then if that goes to next week, well, then we still need another week before it's a ripple effect, basically. So you always have to the calendar is not set in stone by any means. It is a living document.
Let it be flexible.
Yeah.
Do not try to be strict with the schedule.
Yeah. And just like, it's a great tool also for your team members to understand, making a choice. If the brewers make a choice to, they switch the package date for some priority of theirs, well, now how is it impacting other priorities? So that transparency, I think, across the board can help the organization kind of make the best decisions. That has nothing to do with social media.
So maybe we could spend just a little time for our attendees talking about content. And we were talking about strategy and we talked about prioritization, but content format is important. Are we using posts? Are we using reels? Maybe give them a sense for what's really capturing the attention of your customers right now.
Well, Instagram is a fickle friend. We never know what it's doing, what it wants, so as much as possible we go with the flow. But basically, if something is an informative post, it's going to be a post. If it's something more fun, it can be a reel. Reels are more likely to get you engagement, they're more likely to get you some eyes, but people aren't going to rarely click open the caption and read something you might need them to read. That's another great point about having a newsletter, is you have all your fans who are very interested in what you have to say. They'll go read their stuff there, but ultimately, if it's a beer release, maybe it can be more fun, it can be reel or a post, but anything informative I'm gonna put in a post, and then anything I want either to get more eyes on or that is more fun and can be seen by a wider audience is what's gonna be a reel. And something I've noticed with reels is that our followers and our fan base see them less than new eyes. So if you want to spread your message more, if you want new fans, reels is gonna be the way to go. But if you want to speak to the people who follow you on Instagram, you're gonna see more of them are gonna be seeing a post and probably reading it.
Yeah, and on that note, so knowing that if newer customers are looking at reels versus like your fans, well, how are you speaking on that channel then? You cannot assume that people know everything about your brewery when it's a reel that someone just happened to, they're looking at other reels that aren't beer related. So now when they run into yours, how does that stand out and how does that capture their attention? Because if it's just like, oh, and here's our canning line going, that's not going to stop someone from scrolling. So yeah, it is finding the right content for the right channel within the channel even. And it totally depends, like reels are not, or TikTok, or they're not, you can't sponsor them right now, the insights are not fantastic. So you're spending a lot of effort to create content that's kind of just going out there, and you're just hoping for the best. You have to think strategically about how you're using each of those channels. But I would recommend that finding a way to capture someone's attention visually by creating some sort of standardized way that you do create content. So when someone is scrolling their feed or their reels or whatever it is, they immediately see it and they're like, oh, that's bench, that's left field. I know that that's left field because it has this look. So what's the thing that you can do to really help draw that in?
Yeah. So I'm gonna say consistency again.
Yeah.
But you want to see like a consistent look, a consistent voice, whether it's a post or a reel or a tweet or a newsletter. That doesn't mean it's from the same person, but it means it's a voice that fits into your strategy and is consistent across all of your channels and all of your posts. Ultimately, I'm not gonna lie, we started doing reels because engagement was down on Instagram like it is for everybody else. And they turned into a really fun thing that I now like to do, and we get a lot of people who think they're fun.
Yeah.
But ultimately, reels you're using a trending sound because you're trying to get it on the reels page. Like, it's a monster. We all know that social media is a monster. It is just a monster that we have to deal with every day.
But in terms of consistency, a good test and creating a look that's unique to your brand, a good test is if I took our product out of this picture and put someone else's in, does this now look like does it still look like us? So just think about that when you're taking images, when you're showing different visualizations of things. If it could be anyone else's product in there, then you need to keep working on what that look is.
There's also, I want to say, no wrong answer. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. That's the freedom of social media, is that whether it's a post or a reel and this one does bad and this one does good, might not be you, might not be the content, could be the day, could be the people looking at it. So it is, like you were saying, it's the accumulation. It's your overall voice, your overall look, your overall feel, and how people are connecting with that versus this post versus this reel versus this one specifically.
And another thing that I've learned from Marissa and Amy is really just making mistakes is okay.
Make them.
Yeah, a worse mistake is to not dive in because you're nervous or you're scared. This is all about testing and learning what works. And so don't go wild with it, but go 5 degrees left or right of center and find your true north eventually, but do it. Start it right now.
Consistency doesn't mean don't learn and change and grow. It just means don't go here and then here and then here and then over here. It's a gradual process of finding who you are and finding that voice.
Yeah, well said. So consistency is a theme. Visual identity of your brand is important. One thing just to touch on, because it may be on your mind, and that's budgets. And we had a really healthy discussion about what kind of money do we need to spend in order to be relevant in social media. And the answer is, it depends, but it doesn't have to be a lot. And honestly, if you've got good organic content and you've got good followers who are praising you and sharing you with their friends, then you've got a good start. Where you start to see a tapering off or even a decline in engagement, you might ask yourself, well, is my content left or right of center where it needs to be, or do I need to expand my reach to new audiences? And Marissa was talking about Reels really giving you that ability to expand beyond your current followers to new audiences. And you might also put a little bit of money aside for boosting posts and using the segmentation functions of each of these social media platforms to identify an audience just a little bit further out than your arm's reach, and then to market to them and to see in a test and learn capacity, what did that $50 get you in terms of a return or engagement? All right.
I will say just on those boosted posts that we really don't do many. I've maybe done 1 or 2 boosted posts this year, if any at all. And the way to use those, I think, to maximize your potential is to be really strategic about them. So you don't want to just boost whatever post because Instagram says to boost this one, because Instagram just wants your money.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is say, we have a new beer that's in the LCBO, and the people in Thunder Bay who might not follow Left Field are going to see that on the shelf in LCBO and go, what's this? So doing a boosted post about that beer in the LCBO and targeting it towards other markets where it's in the LCBO can be really effective, and that's where you're going to see potential returns. Not that you can track those returns anyway, it's so ephemeral. But that's more effective than just boosting whatever post Instagram gives to you, or an event, or things like that, something very specific.
Yeah, it's very hard to associate spend on social like one-to-one with sales. You don't spend $100 and make $100 more, but you can be, to Marissa's point, you can be very strategic with your tailoring your audience for that specific message. If you're having an event at your brewery, you can sponsor a post to the local area to make sure that people around the brewery, without a doubt, know that you're having something. If you're doing something with an on-premise customer, and they have a couple different locations, you can target ads around their locations to talk about the partnership that you have, if it's a special deal for a month or something. So there are different things, different ways to strategically use them tactically, but in terms of overall brand messaging, while it's important to get your brand visible to a wide amount of people, that's why people advertise on TV, because if you have that kind of money, but if you can reach so many people at once, but if you don't have big budgets, spending a ton of money on just broad brand advertisements on social, you don't see an immediate return. It's an investment for the longer haul to slowly seed your brand in the minds of people. But if you are small, looking for hardworking dollars, it's not you will not yield immediate results that way.
I think that's well said. So it's worth mentioning too, just as far as content formats, live streaming, and some of you may have played in this, and the 3 of us all agreed it's tricky, and you have to be very careful because not only from a tech perspective, do you have to have everything lined up to where you've got a solid pipe for the internet, you've got a connection to whatever video capture device, and you've got that kind of consistency to produce good content. If you make a mistake and you've alerted everybody to it, they might give you one pass, but if you make another one, then they're never going to, or they'll be hesitant to log into anything you have live. So best is to test and learn with this, and to make sure that you've got everything lined up before you actually have an event where you want to have an hour's worth of live content streamed. So moving on a little bit to giveaways and other kind of hooks and engagement pieces. Marissa, maybe we'll let Amy start this one. Could you talk at all about the kind of tools, or not tricks, but promotions that you might use via social to get your current customers engaged and maybe talking about you in a different way?
So what you have up on screen is a great example of that. So we try to find partners that will amplify our message, that have a different audience than ours. So we worked with Go RVing on a video project of theirs. They visited breweries all over Canada. We were fortunate to be chosen for Ontario. So that's a web series that lives on YouTube in perpetuity, and we're able to now reach a different audience of folks that are into RVing and might want to, they're into driving, so they'll drive to our brewery. And so it is about it's about finding new channels to reach those different audiences. In terms of Yeah, I think really it's about finding ways to expand expand your audience through strategic, aligned partnerships. So if your target demographic is like 50-year-old guys who love to watch soccer, should you be sponsoring or trying to partnership with events that are really far away and talking to 21-year-old women? I mean, yes, that expands your consumer base, but not necessarily in a way that naturally it's, similar to creating content and gradually building out. Start with who your people are and shoulder out from there. Don't just find a totally different audience and try to create a partnership there.
Now, is Bench doing anything with contests or engagement like that?
Yeah, in terms of contests, we have run contests when they're very, again, strategic. So we launched an RTD this year, and we did a few giveaways associated with that. It is a challenge. Contesting is challenging, I find, because maybe many of you have faced this as well. Their imposter accounts start popping up and reaching out to your fan base, asking for their confidential information, credit card information. So we have to get everyone to report and shut them down. So it creates a big headache usually when we're running a contest. Also, the type of consumer that you're getting when contests run, it starts out as like people that follow your account, but then it will expand big time to people that are just there to try to get the free thing. And yeah, they'll follow your account, but that's not an engaged customer. That is just someone that is there to try to win the prize. And then, a lot of the time they'll continue to follow you. They're not actively going around unfollowing all the contests, but that's not someone that is, it's equivalent to like buying your followers kind of. Think of like, if you're offering a prize value of $400, what could that $400 get you if you spent it elsewhere? Is $400 on a single post really the way that that $400? $400 is a lot for a lot of breweries. So is that the most efficient use of that money?
I think ultimately what contests and those kind of things do is increase your follower number, and I think that's a really old school way of looking at social media. And those numbers don't necessarily mean anything. Like if your follower number is really high and those people aren't engaging, your engagement number tanks. And what you want is an engaged following. So the importance is of maybe having a smaller number of people who are more engaged, which is why we don't really do, I'm sure we've done them occasionally, but we don't really do social media contests. We more will do a contest in our newsletter where those people are already engaged, and then it becomes more of a reward for being a newsletter customer and a repeat customer than it does just like do this thing, and you won't remember that you entered in a week.
Yeah, that's well said. So maybe just to close off this part of the presentation to make sure that we allow time for everybody to ask their questions, something that we had talked about was when crises happen. And it's a tough conversation to have even in a panel environment like this, because a recall or a death in your staff or COVID, of all things that everybody worldwide had to deal with. Now, Amy, maybe you could give us some pointers or an example that has happened with Bench in the past about social media actually being a vehicle for managing this kind of an issue.
We're very fortunate that no major crisis has happened at or around the brewery. So I haven't had to go into triage mode there. But if something did happen, I do have the buy-in from my general manager that I can handle things to a certain degree. If something there was a death or some sort of violence happened or something at the brewery, I would connect with him any time of day to sort it out, because it is important to kind of get ahead of things and be transparent. Be human. We are humans behind our screens. So, handling things in the most human way possible. And I will say, the only things that we've really dealt with recently, because we're, in the country, the power goes out occasionally. And while it's not a crisis, people are coming for dinner and we have to alert them that, oh, unfortunately we have to shut down. So that is just, the taproom manager is texting me, hey, can you let everyone know? And I just post it on social. So, and then when we're back up, we're back up. So it is just creating those lines of communication between the different decision makers or stakeholders within the business who need to be alerted of things and need to be aware of what's going on.
I will say for us that most important is transparency of the big things and the small things. When people and your community trust you to be transparent about the small things, they know that you're going to be transparent about the big things. So that's everything from we took a price increase and we're letting you know, and these are the reasons, to back before everybody could be vaccinated, we had a taproom member test positive if you were in this amount of time, now you're aware. We also had a typo incident where we printed 15,000 labels with a typo in the front of the can, and even that we were transparent about and made it into a fun hashtag. So big things and small things, if you're open and honest, and the typo was me. That was a fun day. If you're open and honest with your community, they're going to trust you when it comes time, when something happens. Inevitably something's gonna happen. Being open and honest is always best policy.
Because we're community leaders. That's something that Marissa and Amy have repeated to me. We are pillars in that way, socially and from a responsibility perspective in our communities. And so they trust us for that kind of transparency. Yeah. And Amy said this, and I just want to reiterate, having one person as that point of contact is so key, because that person is going to communicate with upper management. They are going to be the voice in times of crises. And if that's the case, you don't have mixed messages being sent out in different channels by different people. You don't want to have that kind of confusion when something's critical at hand. All right, so we left our set. There's always lots to talk about, but I have a feeling that this is going to be a pretty engaged group. So we wanted to leave that 12 to 15 minutes at the very end to just have a forum. Let's talk about what your questions are. Go ahead, get us started.
Thank you both very much. Obviously, very different focuses. You're saying focusing about the LCBO. Marissa, you're talking about the tap room. Untapped. I have a love-hate relationship with Untapped. So I look, and we're now off because I just look at it as just a cost. I'm not sure what I'm getting for it. Can you please both talk to that about how you guys use it? Because again, you Untapped as they come to my tap room, review the beer, the bench. So your social is less focused on that. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah.
Just to repeat the question, sorry, the gentleman's asking about Untapped and really how to have a best practice use of that.
Yeah, just to clarify, beer is important at Bench. It's just also the experience of enjoying the beer at our brewery.
I apologize for that.
No, that's good. I just wanted to clarify.
I've been to your brewery.
Awesome. So Untapped really for me is more of a passive thing. Consumers are there. People who love craft beer, some of them like to review craft beer on Untapped. Anywhere that your consumer is, you at minimum need to be watching it. You don't need to pay for anything, actively engage. You don't need to participate, but you need to be an observer. So ensuring your listings are correct, ensuring the pictures are correct on there, but I wouldn't it should, my perspective is that it's not a platform that needs a ton of time or money spent against it. People are gonna go there if they love to review beer, and it's just important for you to, or at least for us at Bench, it's important for us to be accurate. And if a lot of people are complaining about a certain beer, that hasn't really happened.
But it's a huge indicator, and it's really important to be at least on it and aware of what people are saying about your beer.
Or if someone's like going cuckoo bananas, like people love it, well, great, now we have to, when we pitch at the LCBO next year, like, I'm gonna talk about how
The
people
LCBO does
love
Untapped.
this beer. So it's almost a monitor of how people are perceiving your beer. Or if they're saying like, oh, the quality's really changed, and then you go talk to the brewer and you're like, oh, we actually changed the malt in this beer or something, then, you know, those are, it can help you make better decisions to create consistently good beer.
The way we use it also like a proactive way of just when we release a beer, we update the image, we put the name out, make sure the style's correct, so that if people do come to the tap room and have it and want to look at it Untapped because they like to use Untapped, that it's there for them to use. But we're not treating it as a social channel. But like Amy's saying, it's so important to see if Greenwood had this number last year, we want to see that number either the same or higher. And if it's lower, then we know that's an issue. And I mean, Reddit is a whole other conversation. But sometimes it's a matter of going to where the people are, and Untapped is a great place where people are going to say things about your beer that they might not say to your face, and you don't have to take those to heart, but it's good to know what people are saying.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, go ahead.
So clearly engagement is an important success factor in social media. I guess, do you have any meaningful key performance indicators or metrics you look to beyond things like obviously, you know, likes, comments, and stuff like that? Is there anything else you can look to measure the success of your social media?
Yeah, so the question for everybody was, what are the KPIs, key performance indicators that we really use to measure the success?
I would say it's social media as a whole. It's hard to give a specific answer. I think you need to be looking at certain things like a launch post. I have certain expectations for when we launch a new beer and how that will perform. A post about just general enjoyment of our beer, our core portfolio, that will have different engagement aspects. So I have different expectations and different KPIs depending on what the content is and what I'm trying to push out. And so I think it's like, so if we're launching, we launched Sundays, Rosés, Light Sour last year, and we're like, we think that it's going to speak to a new target demographic. Well, I can go in and look at the insights on that post and see who was engaging with this post. Was I correct in assuming that we're attracting a slightly younger audience than what our normal posts attract? Who is this reaching and who's really engaging with this post? And you can do that for anything. It's about, before you're putting the content out there, kind of setting expectations for yourself of how it will perform and then measuring it against. If you have no expectations, it's hard to look at insights and find meaning for them.
I'd say ultimately try not to get caught up in the likes of Instagram especially. Engagement is important to look at. Again, talking about like ratings, what I look at is growth, and I want to see engagement grow. I'm not necessarily looking for a specific number, because last year our engagement was at 7% and this year it's at 1.7 because of the way Instagram is working. Yeah. That's out of my control. That's nothing I can really control. So what I want to see is, okay, we were at 1.4 in December, now we're at 1.7, we're seeing growth. And that to me is more important than a specific number.
Yeah.
Don't look at likes.
No, and Facebook or Meta will change their metrics and they will change the algorithm on the back end. Do not get set in your ways on the way that you approach things. It's not, there's no hard and fast rule with social media. It is an organic platform.
I think I said this, there's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. There is only continuing to move forward. And that's the way you have to look at it. You don't want to get lost in the numbers.
I completely agree with what they just said. I want to just add, though, that we know that Facebook and Instagram behind the scenes have established thresholds like 1,000 page likes or 10,000 page likes in order to achieve certain visibility in their algorithm, right? And so what that means to me is don't buy likes, get your likes in naturally and organically, but understand that until you hit a basic threshold, and most of you are probably past this, but like of 1,000 likes, you're really not showing up on Facebook's radar. You're really not showing up on Instagram's radar. Once you achieve certain levels, then naturally you're going to be a part of feeds and their algorithm in a way that you weren't before. So don't press pause and don't just go at 5 miles an hour. Get to certain thresholds as quickly as possible, which is going to unlock additional opportunities for you.
And there are thresholds in terms of, or there are ways to increase momentum, really. Because if a post doesn't do well, that doesn't mean that you should stop posting. It means almost probably you should post more. And you should engage within your post. It's not just you standing on a soapbox announcing things to people. It is about creating a community and engaging. The reason that people comment on your page and share pictures are because they want to interact with your brand. So it is, the more that you put into it, I mean, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, as I mentioned before, but the more the effort that you put into it, the more that, that momentum will increase.
And I'm gonna say consistency, but it's that consistency of, you don't wanna do 10 posts in one day and then nothing for 2 months. Like, even if you can only manage 1 post a week, do 1 post a week. Don't be doing all or nothing. 1, Instagram hates it. But 2, when somebody comes to your page, they want to see consistency, they want to see a voice. And by having something consistent, like we've all been doing an Instagram page of a restaurant that hasn't posted anything in 10 months. And you're like, are they open? What are they doing? So it just, the consistency is what's important. And again, Instagram likes consistency. And that means consistency in responding to comments and responding to messages. And that also helps those repeat customers in your community feel like you're in the community with them.
And the consistency also makes it feel like more of a natural conversation, which is what social media is about. A personal conversation, a consistent conversation with your brand. We have a couple minutes left. Yeah,
I wonder about like secondary taproom accounts. So it's something that at our brewery, we're selling across the province for hundreds of retailers, and it's sort of, I don't want our taproom, our taproom is really small in comparison to our brewery, so it's highly localized. We have a secondary account for that, and we're always managing this bit of push and pull between the two, and messaging consistency. So I wonder, I see other breweries doing it too, some of them that have the secondary account that is more localized, and just if there's any thoughts on that. I don't know if either of you guys have that.
We don't. Well, we kind of do. One of our sales reps has his own account, but it's kind of his personal account, it's not his sales rep's account, and it's totally separate. But he gets to be his fun personality there. And I think if we were to do something like that, the way to treat that is to almost have 2 separate voices and 2 separate strategies, because you're really doing almost a business account and a personal account, if you think of it that way. And what is interesting there is a tap room, you get more face-to-face. You can almost do that more as a personality account, and so it can have a totally different voice. And I think the way to let them feel less like they're fighting against each other is just to push them apart.
One is Ronald McDonald and the other is
McDonald's, yeah.
No, we don't have a separate account because our brand is so entrenched in location that we can't really separate them. But I mean, it all comes down to resources and effort. If you have the capability and you think that you have such a different message for both, that it makes sense to have 2 platforms, and you can, give them attention consistently, then by all means, go for it. Where we are right now, I don't have the capacity to manage our accounts. And it's also, our messaging really wouldn't be different on the 2 platforms. I'm not afraid to post, hey, come to our event this weekend. We just hosted a craft makers market at the brewery on the weekend. Great. I sent that out to our 30,000 followers, and at the, in a week, I'm gonna delete it. So that when somebody lands on our page, it's not about these like little rinky-dink events that we've run, but it's what we're doing on site is part of our brand, so I'm not afraid to post it on our page.
I think ultimately what a good example of that would be is the Steam Whistle brand, where they have the Steam Whistle Brewery and the Steam Whistle Beer Garden, and they share a wall, but they are two different voices. They might have a similar image style, but they're two separate accounts doing something different.
I think what we're hearing is maybe by default use one, and then only if you achieve a scale and kind of a geographical difference, maybe take a look at the second one, or even voice or personality difference. One thing that's worth mentioning, so we don't forget, please use your business accounts, don't use personal accounts. Where we were hearing examples where there's a sales rep who might have a voice with his or her account, but where possible, only post from your business page, only post from your business account, because nothing is more off-putting than somebody speaking from a personal account on behalf of your brand. Does that make sense to everybody? Maybe I've seen it happen a lot.
I think in that vein too, the opposite equivalent is treat your business account as a business. If you want to have a face of your brewery, then okay, it's not the path I would take, because then you get into a whole thing about personal versus business responsibilities. But having a consistent voice for your brand means you can be bigger than one person.
Yeah.
So I would ultimately recommend almost anybody going that route versus being one personal voice on a brand account.
Could I just build on that then and say, then do you use that philosophy when you're looking at other people's posting about your business? Because you can't share everything that everybody posts, so how do you kind of cull through all that? Are you looking at that and say, okay, this is a good representation of our business?
That's exactly it.
And
If
then
you,
share
when
this.
people are sharing something, what you're sharing from other people,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great when people are making content for you, but if that is going to not fit your image or dilute your brand or not fit in with your brand voice, we're not resharing it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking through and I'm saying, okay, this fits the left field look and tone and voice, then I'll reshare it.
Right.
But ultimately, at least responding to those and being like, great shot,
Yeah.
can mean so much to people.
But sharing people's content is like, people love it. But even more so than does this image fit our brand and what we're trying to say, just click on their profile, just take a quick look first too. Because if they have some stuff that does really is out there, don't share that.
You don't want that
You're
accidental
correct.
click going
Yeah.
somewhere that you don't know where to go.
Because actually, I'm sure you've looked at insights, and when you share something on somebody else's stuff on your story, you're getting quite a few people will click on that person's profile.
Yeah.
So just you're giving a voice to someone, and make sure that you're behind whatever,
You know what you're amplifying.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that we're kind of at the end of our time, and we're happy to stick around and answer a couple more questions, but let's go ahead and give a round of applause. Very fun to work with, great ambassadors for their respective brands, Left Field and Bench. I'd encourage you, their contact information is up there. They've said if you have questions, if they can help, please reach out to them, or you can reach out to me directly. But appreciate you folks being in this, and look forward to talking with you further. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.